Welcome to this Chromperfect training video. This video was produced using Chromperfect version 8 and Windows 11. Other versions of the software and operating system may be slightly different. Check your manual for information about your version of Chromperfect. This presentation is taken from the Chromperfect main manual, which is supplied with all modern Chromperfect systems in PDF format and is installed with the software. To view any of the manuals, please locate the following directory on your computer: c:/cpdata/manuals. Note that you will need a PDF reader installed on your computer to open the documents. This video is part of a wider chapter looking at specific Chromperfect features. The CIMS Program. The Chromatography Information Management System utility provides a way to search selected directories for Chromperfect files and create lists of files that match specified criteria. Output may be directed to the printer, a PDF file, an ASCII text file, or a sequence file. Within its purview, CIMS can search as efficiently as some LIMS. CIMS is not intended to replace a LIMS. Instead, it is designed to give the analyst the ability to preview the data before it is uploaded into the LIMS. CIMS will search raw, bound, method, calibration, and sequence files. Bound files contain raw, method, and, maybe, calibration data in addition to the integration data that is unique to bound files. All four sections may be searched. Once the files have been searched, the list appears, and the user may move, copy, and delete listed files, print a report reflecting the current file list, or create a sequence file containing the listed file names. When a user creates or appends to a sequence file, the file rights are logged in the usual Chromperfect fashion. In contrast, CIMS file operations allow the user to move, copy, and delete files, but these actions are not so logged. Because it confers considerable power upon its users, CIMS is protected by two user privileges. Users who lack permission to perform CIMS searches will be warned, then CIMS will appear as usual, but the Start Search command button will be disabled, effectively preventing them from searching files. They may still look around in CIMS and become acquainted with its features. Users who lack permission to perform CIMS file operations will be warned if they attempt to do so, and the operations will not occur. Furthermore, users who lack permission to write sequence files will be warned if they attempt to do so, and the file will not be written. Using CIMS. The actions that a user may perform with CIMS are summarized in the following flowchart. You may wish to pause the video to review this information currently shown on the screen. To invoke the CIMS utility, launch the main menu program and press the Find button. The following form will appear. The main control for CIMS is the file type. This list box selects the type of file that will be searched. 6 Chromperfect file types are supported: raw, bound, method, calibration, sequence, and solution files. The selection determines whether certain menus are active or inactive and may also affect other settings. This form has 3 menus, which are described in turn below. The File menu has 3 items. Load configuration file allows the user to load a set of search criteria from a pre-existing configuration file. Save configuration file allows the user to save the current search criteria in a configuration file. Exit saves the current settings in the user's INI file, and then terminates CIMS. Therefore, each user's settings persist from one CIMS session to the next, even if these are launched from different Chromperfect programs. The Edit menu provides access to the criteria editing forms, described in a later section. When searching bound files, the raw, integration, method, and calibration menu items will be enabled. When searching all other types of files, only the menu item for the selected file type is enabled. The Search menu is enabled only when searching bound files. This menu allows the user to select which classes of criteria, raw, integration, method, and calibration, will be applied. The enabled sections are indicated with a check mark, and choosing the menu item toggles the check mark. Inactive sections may still be edited, but they will not affect the search in any way. These check marks are copied to the corresponding items in the Edit menu, so that users will understand whether they are editing an active or an inactive section. The tab sections. This form has 4 tab sections, which are described in turn below. The Search Directories tab section, shown above, contains a spreadsheet that displays the search directory paths. If no paths are configured, the spreadsheet will be empty. At least one directory must be present, or no files will be found. Users may quickly append their search directories to the list by pressing the large button at the lower right. Pre-existing paths will not be duplicated. To add a new path, select a row in the spreadsheet, if there is one, and press the Insert button. A new row will appear after the selected row. To delete an existing path, select a row in the spreadsheet and press the Delete button. The selected row will vanish. To edit an existing path, select a row in the spreadsheet and edit the text directly, or press the button in the rightmost column to browse paths with the Path Inquiry form. The order of the paths in this spreadsheet determines the order in which the directories are searched. Frequently, this is of little importance. To alter the search order, select a row in the spreadsheet and press the Move Up or Move Down button. The selected row will move up or down in the list. The Search Specifications tab section, shown below, determines how the search will be conducted. At the top left are controls to set limits on the date stamp of candidate files. Files that do not meet the date stamp criteria will not be read. Such files will not be listed, regardless of their contents. In the frame captioned search for files that meet are 2 radio buttons. In terms of their effect on the search results, these are the most important controls within CIMS. If all criteria is selected, then no candidate file will pass unless it meets every specified criterion. Files that meet some selected criteria, but not others, will not pass. This is the more restrictive setting, and the more criteria that are selected, the more restrictive it becomes. If any criterion is selected, then the candidate file will pass if it meets any specified criterion. This is the less restrictive setting, and the more criteria that are selected, the less restrictive it becomes. The remaining controls determine the source of the file names and their disposition of the results. If the checkbox captioned Search Current File List only is checked, then the search directories are ignored, and only currently listed files are checked. This allows the user to take a list of files and apply other criteria, narrowing the search and reducing the number of file names in the list. If the checkbox captioned Append Search Results to Current List is not checked, then the old list is cleared when a new search is started. If it is checked, then the new file names are appended, widening the search and increasing the number of file names in the list. Duplicate entries are avoided. The 2 checkboxes cannot be active simultaneously. Typically, they are used as follows. First, the user adjusts the criteria and appends the results until the list is quite large. Next, the user changes to searching the list, and applies other criteria that eliminates many of the candidates. By alternating between these 2 modes as necessary, the user may apply quite sophisticated logic and quickly locate the files of interest. The Display Item tab section, shown below, determines which item, if any, will be displayed along with the file names and other information. The combo box contains a list of all relevant items. To disable this feature, select None. Otherwise, select the data type that you wish displayed. If the selected data type is numeric, then the frame captioned numeric item format will be enabled. Enter a format string to control the precision of the displayed data. For example, to list 4 decimal digits, enter the string 0.0000. If the selected data type is multi-target, by component, then the frame captioned match this component name will be enabled. Any entered text will be taken as a component name, and only data matching this name will be displayed. The comparison of component names is case-insensitive, but otherwise exact. If the field is blank, then the data will be taken from the hit component, if there is one, or the first component, if not. If the selected data type is user field value, either text or numeric, then the frame captioned match this user field tag name will be enabled. Any entered text will be taken as a tag name, and only data matching this tag name will be displayed. If the field is blank, then the displayed data will be taken from the first user field if there is one. This is not an especially useful feature since the choice for the first item in the user field list is not under user control. The Commands tab section, shown below, allows the user to start the search and monitor its progress. Press Start Search to begin a search. The numbers in the status frame will increment as files are processed. The numbers indicate the number of candidate files considered so far, the number that met the specified criteria, and the number of files currently in the list. The last two numbers will be identical unless the user is appending file names to the current list, and that list is not empty. Press Stop Search to prematurely terminate a search. The remaining files will not be examined, and the current list will be displayed as usual. Press Abort Search to call off a search. No files will be displayed. When there are a lot of files in the search directories, the search may take several seconds. Usually, each file is processed in less than a second, but large bound files may require several seconds. The status frame displays the progress of the search. The first two lines indicate the current search directory and file name. Below that are listed the number of candidate files found so far, and the number that passed. These numbers normally increment rapidly during a search. A pause indicates that the current file is unusually large. The last line indicates the number of files in the list. If CIMS is using the search directories, then this number will increment during the search as files that pass are added. It will be equal to the number just above unless CIMS is appending file names to an existing list. If CIMS is searching the existing list, then this number will decrement during the search as files that fail are removed. At the end of the search, this form will be hidden behind the file list form, but if that form is moved, the status display can still be seen. The criteria editing forms. The criteria editing forms are all similar. The raw data criteria editing form is shown below. Everything said about this form applies as well to the other four criteria editing forms, except that they lack the acquisition time and user fields limits. These other forms are not illustrated herein, but their items are listed at the end of this chapter. The form is daunting at first but consists of 5 simple sections. At the top left of the form are controls to set limits on the acquisition date stamp. This functions much the same as the file date stamp. Files that do not meet the acquisition date stamp criteria are not listed, regardless of any other criteria that would otherwise qualify the file for listing. Note: when searching bound files, remember that the acquisition date limits apply even when the data items on this form are disabled by unchecking the raw item in the search menu. At the top right are controls to limit user field searches to a specified tag name. More on this later. Below these frames is the text items section. This lists several text fields that raw and bound files contain. Next to each item's name are 3 radio buttons, which control the status. The captions for these radio buttons are P, present, A, absent, and D, don't care. The captions are buttons. Pressing any of them will set all the radio buttons to the selected state. If P is selected, then the criterion is met whenever the target field in the candidate file contains the test string displayed in the text box to the right of the radio buttons. If A is selected, then the criterion is met whenever the target field in the candidate file does not contain the test string. For example, in the above illustration, only files with operator names that lack the word Joe will pass this criterion. Joe's files will not be included. If the D option is selected, the criterion is ignored. The text box is dimmed and cannot be edited. Below the text items section is the numeric items section. This lists several numeric fields that raw and bound files contain. Next to each item's name are 3 radio buttons, which control the status. The captions for these radio buttons are S, single value, R, range, and D, don't care. The captions are buttons. Pressing any of them will set all the radio buttons to the selected state. If S is selected, then the criterion is met whenever the target field in the candidate file meets the specified comparison with the test value. There are 4 options. Target field equal to test value. Target field not equal to test value. Target field greater than test value. Target field less than test value. For example, in the above illustration, any injection volume equal to 10 will pass, and any sample weight greater than 1 will pass. If the R is selected, then the criterion is met whenever the target field in the candidate file meets the specified comparison with the specified range limits. There are 2 options. Target field within range. Target field outside range. If the D option is selected, then the criterion is ignored. The other controls vanish. Note, numeric comparisons are made after the numbers have been rounded off to the nearest 10,000th, so that minuscule differences will not cause false, not equal, conclusions. The numeric items section lists several binary fields in the raw file. The captions for these radio buttons are T, true, F, false, and D, don't care. Viewing the search results. When the search is complete, the following form will appear. Double-clicking on a row will open the file with the appropriate Chromperfect program. Raw and bound files are opened in the analysis program. Method, calibration, sequence, and supermethod files are opened in the file editor program. This form has 4 menus, which are described in turn below. The file menu has 10 items. The first 3 are enabled only when searching raw or bound files. Make sequence file allows the user to create a sequence file containing the raw or bound file names. Append to sequence file is similar. Set method file name allows the user to specify the method name that will be put in the sequence file. The next 4 items control printing. Print to printer and print to PDF files send paginated reports to the respective destinations. Print to text file and append to text file send ASCII text to a file of the user's choosing. The next item, send to summary, submits the entire list to the summary utility for quick report generation. The last 2 items allow the user to view the version history of the listed files. View file history searches the data log file and displays the matching entries in a form that allows the user to produce reports and text files, as described in the history chapter. If all directories is checked, then the entries will be listed even if the files are no longer where they were written. The report menu controls which items appear in printed reports. If Show File Paths is checked, then the fully qualified file names are printed, otherwise the paths are omitted. If Show File Information is checked, then the file date stamp and the file size are printed. If Show Display Item is checked, then the extra item is printed. If Include Search Criteria is checked, then search criteria are printed after the table of file names. The list menu has 6 items. The first 3 affect existing list entries. Clear allows the user to clear the entire list. It is enabled whenever the list is not empty. Remove selected entries allows the user to temporarily remove selected files from the list. It is enabled whenever at least 1 file is selected. Restore removed entries allows the user to restore previously removed to the list. It is enabled whenever at least 1 file is removed. The next 3 items allow the user to add file names to the list. Add file name to list allows the user to browse for an existing file. Load new list from file and append file to list allow the user to browse for a text file, example, one made by the file menu items. The selected file is read, and the file names replace, or are appended to, the current list. In all cases, the underlying files are not affected. The File Operations menu is enabled only when 1 or more list entries are selected. The user may move, copy, or delete specified files. When files are slated for moving or copying, the following form will appear. The user may select the destination directory, and may approve or override each file individually, or OK all remaining files, or cancel the operation. A similar form appears to shepherd the user through file deletion, but there is no destination directory, and hence no text box or browse button. At the bottom of the form are displayed three numbers: the number of files selected, the number of files listed, and the total number of files found, whether listed or not. The last two numbers will be identical unless there are some files that have been removed, and not restored. The logic of search criteria. The previous section explains how an individual criterion comes to pass or fail. This section explains how multiple criteria interact when some pass and others fail. Rule 1: File date and acquisition date limits are absolute. If limits are placed on the file date, or, for raw and bound files, the acquisition date, then no candidate file will pass unless it meets the limit criteria. Those files that do meet the limit criteria will be examined further as described in Rules 2 and 3. Note: when searching bound files, unchecking the raw item in the search menu disables the data items, but not the acquisition date limits. To disable acquisition time checking, one must uncheck both checkboxes. Rule 2: all other criteria are considered in light of the any or all setting. If all criteria is selected, then no candidate file will pass unless it meets every specified criterion. Files that fail any selected criterion will not pass. As more criteria are selected, it becomes harder for a file to pass. If any criterion is selected, then the candidate file will pass if it meets any specified criterion. As more criteria are selected, it becomes easier for a file to pass. Rule 3: multi-target criteria are subject to certain restrictions. Most of the search items are single target, that is, there is only one such field in the candidate file. Examples include the sample name, method name, injection volume. For these items, Rules 1 and 2 suffice. Other search items are multi-target, that is, there may be any number of such fields, or none at all, in the candidate file. The following table lists the multi-target items. Raw for each user field. Tag name, value. Integration for each component. Name, retention time, area, height, amount. Method for each formatted report and user program. File name. Calibration for each component. Name, expected retention time. Sequence for each entry and channel. Base name, sample name, method name. Cycle number, sample weight, injection volume. Dilution factor, internal standard amount, calibration level. The criteria editing form displays the names of the multi-target items in blue, or green if the item is, for each component. When a multi-target item is specified, CIMS will apply the test to all the fields in each candidate file. The number of fields will, of course, vary from one candidate file to the next. Consider first a multi-target text field. If a test for the presence of a string is selected, then the criterion is met whenever any target field in the candidate file contains the test string. For example, when searching method files for the format file name myFormat, any candidate file containing this string will pass the criterion. Other format file names, not containing the string, may also be present, and will not interfere. This logic makes tests for the absence of the test string problematic. The criterion would be met whenever any target field in the candidate file does not contain the test string. With multi-target items, almost certainly one or another field will lack the test string. Therefore, the criterion will always pass, which makes it useless. Accordingly, we do not allow the user to select this option. For every multi-target text item, the A radio button is disabled. The same considerations apply to a multi-target numeric field. The criterion is met whenever any target field in the candidate file meets the comparison with the test values. For example, when searching bound files for a component retention time between 4 and 5 minutes, any candidate file containing at least one such component will pass the criterion. Other components, not in this range, may also be present, and will not interfere. Again, this logic makes tests for the non-equality to the test value problematic. The criterion would be met whenever any target field in the candidate file does not equal the test value. With multi-target items, almost certainly one or another field will differ. Therefore, the criterion will always pass, which makes it useless. Accordingly, we do not allow the user to select this option. For every multi-target text item, the NE radio button is disabled. All other comparisons work normally. Note, the user must choose whether, in order to pass, candidate files must pass all selected criteria, or any selected criterion. This rule, however, does not apply within a multi-target criterion, where the logic is always any of the several fields. It is never all of the several fields. To continue the above example, one cannot demand that every format file name in the method file contain the string myFormat. Rule 4. The user field value items may use a specified tag name. Among the raw criteria are two items, one text and the other numeric, with the name user field value. These are ordinarily multi-target items. CIMS will ignore tag names entirely and search the candidate raw or bound file's entire user field collection. However, if the user specifies a tag name, then only the user field matching this tag name will be searched. In this situation, these items are become single-target items, and the tests for the absence of a string, or non-equality to a number, are allowed. Note, the tag name for searching user fields, in the raw data criteria editing form, and the tag name for displaying user field data, in the Display tab section, are completely independent. Note, the component name that determines which component's data will be displayed has no effect on searching. It will not limit the search to components matching the specified name. List of items. The various items will be displayed on screen within a table for each criteria type. You should pause the video on each table if you want to read through the lists. Asterisks indicate items with multiple targets.